Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte episode 110. Actually, it's a binary day, and today I'm pretty excited because, as you can see, like right below me, we have a guest, and actually we will kind of co-host because we will actually go over the changelog with us, and it's Puru. Puru is Svelte ambassador,
Hi.
and it's a friend, obviously, and he is here to present his new library. I mean, it's not a new library, the new version of his library, which is pretty cool. And I actually used it already. And it's pretty cool. And I'm excited, as usual, for every showcase. But this is particularly exciting for me. So let's jump right into it with the changelog. So Puru will actually comment with me. Let's start with Svelte 5.35.7. When we fix some autofocus, like we silence some autofocus early warning inside dialog, because apparently those are permitted inside dialog. We also don't show adjusted error messages in boundaries. I think I did not see this PR yet, but basically inside Svelte, we are adjusting some error messages to let you know where the error actually originated in terms of components. And so probably there was some problem with this, or it's not needed inside boundaries. I don't know specifically. We also replaced inline regex with a variable. If you don't know regexes, there are quite a few scalar regexes in this Svelte code base, and I think this was an issue. Was an effort from Ocean that said, "Yeah, maybe we should try to rename it with some like meaningful name," and so he did it.
I always end up making this PR every week. Whenever I go back to my old code bases, I see regular expressions in a pointer movement. I'm like, no, Vapuru, why did you do that? Why? It's the slowest thing ever.
Uh, by the way, I don't know if like you agree, but I literally love regexes. Like I'm probably one of the few people in the world that actually enjoy regexes, but I think once you learn them, it's actually like a pretty powerful system. So uh, obviously, like they need to be used sparsely, but when it's needed, it can really like come in clutch. But let's zoom in a bit because this is a pretty exciting Svelte 5.36.0, because now you can like we support our weight in components when using the experimental .async compiler option. So it's not available generally. Like if you just upgrade to 5.36.0, you can immediately use a weight in components, but you can use it if you add the experimental .async issue. This is an issue. Like the reason why we had to put the experimental is because technically there is a breaking change inside this, which is about the timing of $effect.pre function. So basically, let me see if I can show you very quickly. Let's say that you have this playground here. By the way, in the playground, we automatically wrap the playground in a boundary, so you can just use a weight inside a boundary as is.
That is neat. I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean that was something that Rich added, because like obviously if you want to play with a weight in the playground, you can just do it without having to create the boilerplate of adding the boundary and stuff like that. But generally, if you want to use a weight, currently you need to wrap your component in a Svelte boundary. So let's actually talk about this, because Svelte boundary. So if you add a Svelte boundary and it needs a pending snippet, so if you wrap it in this and are loading a basic loading state, then inside here you can actually use a weight. So let's say that we have a component, import component from component from component .svelte, which doesn't exist yet, but we will create one. What am I doing? So let's component like this. So this is basically what the playground is already doing for you. But let's say that you have this component. Now inside this component, you can actually use await freely. So this means that you can use it in derived, in the template. I think you can even use it in the script tag, if I'm not mistaken. So let's write svelte const x is equal await promise dot resolve 42. Yeah, I think we can do it. We can do x and it works. So you can use await in the template. Obviously, you can also use await in a derived, which is also very nice, and you can use await in the template. So technically, you can also do this, which is good. You can do await x, which is also nice.
This is so cool.
Yeah, obviously, honestly, this is game changer. Like you can do all sorts of cool things. Like let's say I don't know, like util dot ts export function, I don't know, time or not, milliseconds, return a new promise, the usual, return a new promise. Aha, I cannot type today. Resolve, and we can set timeout resolve after milliseconds. And let's actually do like input, so we can actually resolve the input just for fun. And now we can do something like import timeout from utils.ts. And if we do something like timeout 1042, it will wait for 1 second and then resolve to 42, which is so cool. And again, as you can see, like you can also do it in derived. So let's say that you have let count is equal to $state 0, and let double is equal to $derived. And maybe, I don't know, you are contacting an LLM to do this. So you need to await, and the LLM takes 1 second to respond, and then respond with count time 2. If you do something like this, and you do double, and then you do button on click, and you do count plus plus, and you do +1, you can see that when I click, it waits 1 second and then it updates, and wait 1 second and then it updates. So you basically can just use await inside. Actually, you don't even need to await in the template in this case, because I'm awaiting in the derived. So yeah, I can do that. And after 2 seconds, it resolves and it works. And I mean, Rich did most of the work here, and it shows because like it's madman JavaScript going on here, but it's very, very cool. And like all of this was to show you the breaking change. The breaking change that is that, let's say that you have let show is equal to true maybe, and then you were using an effect dot pre if show, for example. So let's say that you have something like let object is equal to $state value is equal to 0, for example. And basically, by the way, like this is not something you should do, but let's say that you do if show and object dot value is equal, like is less than 10, for example, show something. Now, let's say that what you're doing is a very convoluted thing where basically you do button, you do on click, and you do obj is equal undefined. Now, to prevent like hide, basically, given that you are setting object to undefined here, to prevent from reading value from undefined here, what you do is that in effect.pre, you do if not object, then show is equal to false. And so this worked before because effect.pre ran before the blocks, so the logic blocks. And this is not the case anymore inside the async branch. So now if I try to do this and I hide, I'll get a type error. If I do the same thing in a new sorry. If I do the same thing in a new playground and I use version 35 so that like async was not there yet, if I do the same thing here, yeah, obviously I don't have utils, but it's not important. So if I do the same thing before async, this actually worked without erroring out because this effect.pre run before this code here. Obviously, you can see that this is kind of a madness way of writing your code, but maybe you have something similar. So that's why the branch is experimental. But if you don't have such edge cases, you can probably just switch to use async and await, and please report any bug because this is very, very cool. And it unlocks so many possibilities like the RPC thing in SvelteKit, which will be released sometimes in the future, but we already have a PR. In the same PR, we also went with silence only warning for inert element. And it kind of makes sense because if an element is inert, it's outside of the only tree. Clean up all the analysis code, and that's it. Only skip updating bound input if the input was the source of the change. So this is something that it kind of relates to the async branch. The reason is like if you are writing into an input and the state change triggers an async work, we don't like we still update the input immediately because otherwise you would like while you type you will stagger and it's the worst experience ever. So to fix that, if you are typing into an input and updating state that update the async work, the input will be updated immediately. And so basically this means that like Svelte will not update the value of the input if you are typing any triggers async work. But the problem before this PR was that this was doing this was done like regardless if the change came from the input. And so if you bound something to an input and try to change the state, it will still not update it, the input, which was breaking a lot of stuff. So this was fixed. We also have a new rune. This was actually released together with the async branch, which is $effect.pending. And this basically tells you if anywhere in your application there is a suspense boundary, a svelte boundary being triggered. So basically this allows you to write like pending state outside of the boundary, which is pretty cool. And is also adding pending snippet Svelte boundary types. So this was a release completely for TypeScript because we released the async branch, but we didn't update the types because Rich got so used to the fact to seeing the red squiggling while developing this initially. Basically forgot to update the types. Yeah, so then we have some patch. So don't log await reactivity loss warning when signal is red in untrack. So this is also something that it's a bit different. So if you are using, so in Svelte 4, reactivity, if you remember, in Svelte 4, reactivity was tied to the fact that you had to write, so let's make an example. If you have a component in Svelte 4, if you wanted dollar sign to react to some variable, let count is equal to 0, let double, let's say that you have function get double. In Svelte 4, if you returned count time 2, it was not working. So if you do if you did something like this, get double, this will not work basically. And the reason for this is because I need an equal sign here. So this will not work in Svelte 4 in legacy mode. The reason for this is because like Svelte 4 was completely using static analysis to determine the dependencies. And so the moment you did something like this, it was not able to see your dependencies. And so it basically like tracked nothing as a dependency. So one way that you had to do it in Svelte 4 was to pass in count as a dependency, so that now double actually depends on count. In the await syntax, this is one of the limitation as well. The reason for this is because like based on how signals work, everything that happens after the await, it's actually like you cannot track that. So to actually make it work, we need to restore the sorry, Puro, I think you're fiddling with the microphone.
Oh, I just scratched my ear. I did not know it would cause an earthquake.
No, don't worry, don't worry. So what I was saying is that like this, unfortunately, is one of this like the same applies to the same unfortunately applies to derived state if you are using it with a wait. So if we go back to our timeout example, like this a bit. Okay, if I go back to our timeout example, like this, now count is actually a dependency of it because it's actually read here. But let's say that I do function get double, just like that. This cannot work because the dependency is hidden inside the get double, and it is after the await. Maybe it will work. No, in this case, it's actually working. I think the only way it doesn't work is when you read something after the first await. So in this case, it's actually working. But if you do, I don't know, let count 2 is equal $ state 0, and you also update count 2. And let's say that I read something from get double. So I do const read is equal await timeout. This needs to be an async function. And then I read count 2. You can see that I get this await reactivity loss. So basically the point is, if you do something like this, Svelte literally can't do anything to persist the fact that count needs to be a dependency. And so to fix this, we'll at least give you like an error in dev so that say, hey, we are trying to read count. This happens when state is read in an async function after an earlier await. So yeah, this basically is, I don't know why it's count. Maybe it's
yeah, it should have been count 2.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a bug. Let me see very quickly. Because this is labeled as count 2. I have the feeling that this is I'll check out. I think it's a bug.
What if you do one thing, you remove the async keyword and then you directly return timeout without any await?
Sorry?
What if you remove the async and then you directly return timeout? No await inside.
I think in that case, it will work. Yeah, it will work anyway, because you are not reading this. So you need to read something after the await for it to be a problem.
Or maybe it's the await keyword that's the issue. What if you put return await timeout?
I don't think it's a problem
Ah,
either.
still
Like
no
it's
problem.
literally that you need to read something after the await to trigger the thing. It's probably just messing the label of the thing. So
Hmm.
that's probably a bug.
Yeah.
We'll fix it later.
A bug discovered on the live stream. Let's go.
Yeah. We discover a bunch of stuff in this live stream. Also, there are some questions. So,
Yeah.
one question is: do we still need Svelte boundary even if we set in configuration experimental data sync? For the moment, yes. And the reason you need the Svelte boundary for the moment is because SSR async is not ready yet. I want to say that I can't remember. There is another maintainer that now I can't remember the name of because I am my brain is melting. That is working on async SSR. So that will happen soon, probably. So when async SSR is a thing, you will not need a Svelte boundary anymore, which is very cool, and I'm very excited about it. But by the way, let's go back to the actual changelog because the fix was to don't log await reactivity loss when a signal is read in untrack. So if you are untracking something and then reading, you don't need the log because you already know that that's not tracked. So it's fine. This is also pretty exciting. Better handle of inspect on array mutation. So I don't know if you know about this, but when you try to do, let's reset our playground, and it did not reset at all. Let's reset this. So let's say that you have an array and you do $state, it's an array, and let's actually do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. And let's say that I do $inspect array. So if I do something like this, and I do sort, for example, I need to go back to, so I do r dot sort um, a and b minus a, so this should flip it. And I need to go back before this release, so 36.2, I would say. Where is the version?
I think it's at the very last.
Version is equal 36.2. Reload. Obviously it's 5.36.2, not just 36. Svelte 36 is not a thing anymore. So if you did this in the 5.36.2, watch what happens when I sort the array. So I get 5 updates. And the reason for this is because, like, under the hood, the native code is literally like comparing and moving elements of the array synchronously. And since inspect is synchronous, every time the array changes, you will get a log. So this doesn't happen with effect. So if you try to do console log $state snapshot r, this doesn't happen. So let's say that we log this and we sort, you only get one log. But this was pretty confusing because inspect is used to know when things changes. And so maybe you are inspecting why an effect is running more than often, more than you expect, and you use inspect and you see that it's running 4 times for a single sort. What is going on? And if you see, you can see exactly the kind of changes that the native code does. So when you sort, it's moving 4 here, then it's moving 3 here, then it's moving 1 here, and then it's moving 0 here. So that's pretty nice to see, but it's quite confusing when when you actually want to debug stuff. And so if we switch to 5.36.3, 7nick actually coming clutch and fixing this bug, and now you only get 1 update, which is pretty nice. Leave proxy array length untouched when deleting properties. So I think this problem was So the point is, we need to listen on the length of the array so that if you push something to the array, we can notify whoever is reading the length. However, I think if you delete something, so if you do r dot delete 0, for example, the length technically is not changed because like you get an empty spot there. So the length is still the same. And so before we were just notifying everybody, hey, the length has changed when you deleted something. But now we're not. Update effect pending immediately after a batch is removed. I don't know this bug. This is probably a bug with async. As you can see, like bug with async starts to come in. Avoid microtask in flash sync. So this is something that so whenever you do flash sync, before we were waiting a microtask. And these things, when you do flash sync a lot, which you shouldn't, but sometimes it's the case, it can adapt to a bunch of microtasks. And so I think Rich was able to, Rich was able to remove this need for the microtask. And so now it should be more performant. Ensure compiler state is reset before compilation. This was something that it was still kind of a problem with the async branch, but basically the point is that what could happen is that if you were compiling a file, and then in the meantime it was compiling another file, the state of compilation could intermingle, and it was problematic. And now this is like the state actually reset before any compilation. Silence inspect errors when the effect is about to be destroyed. So if you are reading something in expect, since synchronous, what could happen is that if you do something like this and you read, I don't know, R at 0, for example, let's say that you destroy this effect when, so let's say that you have this in a compiler and R is a prop. Let me show you. It's easier. So let's say that you do something like this. R is actually a prop, or some props, and R is a prop. And let's say that you import the component from component.svelte, and then you pass in, so component, what am I doing? Component R, and let's say that you guard it with if R. I don't know if that's the case. I think this is the bug. Let's say that you wrap it like this, and then you do R is equal to undefined. Defined. The problem is that, like, since this is synchronous, it will execute immediately after you set R to undefined, and so it will throw, I would say. So let's see. Yeah, exactly. So this will probably cause an error, basically. Wait, no, I think I did something wrong. Yeah, I needed to do this. Yeah, okay. I don't know what that PR is then. I thought I knew it, but in reality, I don't know. I'll take a look later, and I'll see you. So we have 5.36.6 with delegate function with shadowed variable if declared locally. This is just some optimization. Someone actually reported that. So if I open this in another tab, someone basically reported that if you had something like this, let me open in the playground. So if you had something like this, but where basically you are looping over the each, and then you are using the index inside this button, whenever possible. I don't know why there is. Can I refresh the page? Where is this, the unexpected error? Oh, that's TypeScript. We don't want that. And that's TypeScript too. Yeah, so basically the point is, before that release, the on-click of this function was not able to be optimized. So right now, as you can see, we we are in the old version, and we can actually see it in action. If you see at the compiled code, this code will generate a new callback every time we loop. And the reason for this is because the Svelte static analysis was confused by the fact that you named a variable index, and index is also the index of the each loop. So the compiler was confused by this and said, oh, it's using a variable in scope, so I cannot optimize it. And so it was not optimized, and it was creating a new callback every time. But if we switch to the latest version, now it's actually able to optimize even the second thing there. So that's nice. Let's see. Handle error incorrect boundary after reset. So this basically, I think, if you reset a boundary, the error was thrown to the wrong boundary. So now it's instead thrown to the right boundary, and makes Svelte boundary reset function no OP after the first call. So basically, if you try to call it multiple times, since it's already resetting, we set it to a no OP so that you cannot actually call it multiple times. Allow intrinsic Svelte elements to inherit from Svelte elements, Svelte HTML element. So this is just typing for Svelte element. And that's actually it for Svelte. So let's switch to SvelteKit, which has 4 new releases. So let's see. We have some minor changes, and this is interesting. So we already saw this in Vite plugin Svelte, but now it's also supported in SvelteKit, and now you can write your Svelte config in TypeScript, which is pretty nice. However, note your runtime has to support importing TypeScript file for Svelte config TS to work. So in Node.js, the feature is supported with the experimental strip flag. In Node 22.6, it's supported without a flag. Sorry, this is with a flag. After Node 23.6, it's actually supported without a flag. So if you're an older version of Node, you need to actually use this flag. Extends Vite plugin config type instead of duplicating it. So there was a bit of duplication for the config. Regression with roll down Vite, not bundling a single JS file for single and inline up. So if you know, recently Vite also introduced roll down, which is like their Rust-based bundler. And roll down Vite is actually experimental, and you can actually use it with SvelteKit. But it had a bug, and now it does not. Tree-shake internal storage.get helper. So if you are not using it, it's actually tree-shakeable. This was just, I think, comment annotation. Oh, this is very interesting. Now every page layout also receive params. So if you like up until this is something that I actually needed a bunch of time. So up until this moment, if you were using params, so let's say that you had a root like this, I don't know, id / page.svelte, and you wanted to show the ID, right now, like up until this moment, you basically had to do this. So $props, you get data, you had to create plus page.js or plus page.ts. You need to export function load. You need to get the params, and you need to return the params, even like this, for example, params. And so now you can do data.id. So this was like probably fine up until this moment. So now if I go to test, it's going to show test. If I go to testing, it's going to show testing. If I go to Puru, it's going to show Puru. Now you can do this without using a plus page.ts. You can remove this. You can do params, and then you can do params.id. And if I refresh the page, I'm also getting I'm also getting Puru.
This is cool.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. And this was like kind of a like setup release, because obviously when we release RPC call, we don't want you to create unnecessary plus page.ts. So if you can read the params directly from the probes, it's much better. So log when no Svelte config has been found to avoid confusion. So if you don't have a Svelte config, technically we will use one by default, but now we will also log that you don't have one. Support asynchronous read implementation from adapters. So read is a function that basically allow. So the problem with read is that, let's say that you have a file that you need to like read the binary, like an image or I don't know, an LLM model that you store. Let's say that you want to use it. The problem is that if you try to just use it like this, if you try to just like read the file with fs.read file sync, when you go and deploy this thing on Vercel, for example, or on Netlify or on Cloudflare, since that thing is not imported, they will not include that in the final bundle. And so read actually aim to fix this, because with read, you can pass the URL or via Vite, and it will read kind of through Vite. I don't know how it works, to be fair. But basically, the point is it will actually allow you to read raw binary data that then will get bundled together with your application so that you can actually use it. You can actually use it in serverless environment. I mean, really, whenever the bundler removed it from the bundle. And up until this moment, read needs to be synchronous. And read is something that every adapter has to implement in a different way, because every adapter knows how to signal to the underlying platform, hey, you need to keep this thing. And so up until this moment, it was synchronous, and now you can also be it can also be asynchronous, which is good. Add missing params property. This is probably just a type release. And that's it for SvelteKit. We have a new adapter Cloudflare release, which adds support for read imported from app server. So this is why we needed read to be asynchronous for Cloudflare. Let's see. We have adapter Netlify, add support for read. We also need it in Netlify. Adapter Vercel, add support for read implementation. So yeah, it's basically like all the thing. Oh, we also have a new release for enhanced image, and it's actually a breaking change. That's pretty cool. So use new filters and enhancement from Vite plugin Svelte, requires Vite 6.3 and Vite plugin Svelte 6. So this was a recent change by the fact that in Vite plugin Svelte, now preprocessors, each preprocessor is actually its own Vite plugin, so that you can actually see the output of a preprocessor with Vite plugin inspect. And I think this actually unlocks something that I think the new filters basically allows you to not run the plugin on every file, but just on files with a specific element, basically. So either with a specific file name or with a specific actually element in the code, if I'm not mistaken. Svelte.js package as a new release for supporting Svelte config TS. Let me see. Vite plugin Svelte as a new release to add support to the experimental async option and apply dynamic compile option when compiling Svelte modules. We also skip comments block when reporting compiler error that might be caused by a preprocessor. and increase log level to info for no svelte config found message so that it actually shows by default. We also have 4 new release for ESLint config. Mostly about performance. We have ESLint plugin Svelte new release. Add prefers Svelte reactivity rule. That's cool. And support for asynchronous Svelte, obviously. And add support for the new params page prop. Oh yeah, because there is an ESLint rule to do that. We have also a new extension to add support for await and zero type for params. Mm, strip doc type using AST instead of regex. Build free editing with project reference in SvelteKit.page.ts file. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Regardless, new release for language server is generally still the same, and new release for SvelteCheck to support await. Oh yeah, obviously we had a bunch of release for support to support await throughout the ecosystem. Svelte 2TSX is the same, and TypeScript plugin is still the same. Let's just switch quickly to the tracker so that we can see if there's something new from the Svelte maintainers. And I think we already saw that. Yeah. Oh no, this is actually new in your component option in compile module. This is something that will unlock. Like it makes easier for Vite plugins Svelte to not throw if you're passing a random compile. Yeah, I think we already saw most of this thing. Yeah, all right. I think that's
Is this the website that those people use to leak Svelte features ahead of time?
no, but yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. Like this was made by Antoine, which is a fan of this week in Svelte, and it's a nicer way to go over the releases. And yeah, I think it's a pretty nice website. And this tracker is also like you can see like the content come as everything else in the set from GitHub, and basically it's all content. So it's issue, discussion, or PR from Svelte maintainers that are not fixing issues, basically. So it's basically new stuff that you want to look at. All right, so I think that's it. We can switch to a different view because now it's Puru show time. So oh, I need to find my, oh gosh, I cannot find my, uh, I don't know where to switch. Oh yeah, here. I had
Too
to
many
switch.
windows?
I need to remove my thing from the scene. So let me actually remove this, but I also need to add yours. So, all right. So now it's Puru time because he's gonna go over the release of his new library, Neodrag, which is a like dragging library. Because he kind of made an overhaul to it. He's gonna present it. So I'm gonna fade away and I'll let you showcase your library. And then if you have any question, drop them in chat because we will do a Q&A after. You can go.
Sure, sure. Thanks a lot, Paolo. All right, so I hope you all can see my slides. I will start. All right, so today I'm going to introduce you to Neodrag and the recent rewrite I did to make it a lot faster, extensible, and a lot more powerful. So, hi everyone, I am Puru. I come from Jaipur, Rajasthan, which is in the desert of India. So, no camel jokes, please. I'm a full stack developer with over 10 years in the field, an open sourcer, absolute performance freak, and a self titled bundle compressionista. So, let me introduce you to Neodrag. It's a tiny draggable library that is highly reactive and has adapters for Svelte, Vue, React, Solid.js, and Vanilla. It is quite small at around 1.7 kilobyte minified plus broadly for the Svelte version. And it has a it has a heavy core with very lean adapters for each framework. However, it has some shortcomings. It is not extensible, meaning you cannot add your own plugins or customize the behavior beyond the options provided. It also does not have fine grained control, meaning any option change causes unnecessary object creation and garbage collection. And finally, this is the biggest point I would say. It attaches three event listeners to each draggable element, which can be a performance issue if you have a lot of draggables on the page. So if you have 100 draggable elements, multiply that by three. That's how many event listeners you end up with. This is the current Neodrag version 2. Now, since this is this week in Svelte, I'm going to focus more on the Svelte side of things. So what you see here is the API design of the previous Neodrag version 2. Pretty simple, intuitive, just works, no issues in general. And this is really tiny, by the way, only 1.7 kilobytes for the Svelte version. And you can do this nice thing where you pass a reactive position variable to it and it will move around based on the variable, not just the user interaction. This pattern is quite useful for when you want to do stuff like store the position as it is moving and then animate it back with style. In maybe spring animations or something, this is quite nice, but it has a big issue. This example above, so what you are seeing, by the way, is a Svelte action. So a Svelte action is a function which takes in the node and the options were provided to it, and then it returns an update lifecycle, which is run whenever the options pass are changed. So in the example above, what happens is that anytime you drag, this is the example, anytime you drag, it changes the position variable, and when that happens, Svelte actions update methods receives an entirely new object. So here, every drag move, which can happen hundreds of times in one single second. So basically, anytime your mouse moves, it changes a position variable, and that causes the update method to be called, which then creates a new options object. Usually, it wouldn't be a problem, but here the object creation, destruction, garbage collection, recreation is happening every single time you drag, which, as I said, could be hundreds of times per second, and that's a lot of overhead. It's a lot of memory consumption, which could be avoided. And this is not just for the Svelte version, by the way. This is for all the versions of Neodrag across all the frameworks because it uses the same API design. These are the performance issues. There's a much bigger glaring problem. I started getting a lot of feature requests, like for a drop zone feature, drag and drop, magnetic behavior, smart crazy grids, bounds with circles, etc. And I could add a few of them, but that's a lot of extra bytes that everyone have to pay for whether they're using it or not. On top of that, you could not customize anything here beyond the options provided. Even then, it kind of sucks some of the times, even if you could customize. For example, look at how the bounds options types looks. The flexibility while using is nice. As you can see, it can be bounds parent, bounds body, it can be an object, and it can be a document query selector. But the types are just superbly awkward. More so ever, you could not provide a padding on body or parent or the element only through viewport. So the second you had to provide some kind of padding, you had to manually calculate everything, which is not nice. And lastly, you could not hack it to work properly. The library has its own internal state, which means for any sort of real customization, you have to mirror and manage your own state alongside it, which is not desirable at all. It's like having to keep tabs on how Swell signal implementation works down to the smallest detail. It sucks. And all of us are not Paolo. We cannot keep up with how Swell works internally. Uh, so this is a complete rewrite of the library from the ground up. The goal is to address all the issues mentioned previously and provide a more flexible, performant, and customizable solution. This is now more modular, more extensible, and has fine-grained reactivity. Not to mention, a hell of a lot faster also. So on the left is the old code, and on the right is a new one. As you can see, the options are gone. They are just gone. There's no object that you pass options to. It's actually an array. They are now replaced with an array in which you can pass certain functions. These functions are a new concept in Neodrag, and they are called plugins. These plugins are small composable functions that can be used to extend the functionality of the draggable. They can be used to add new features, customize behavior, or even replace existing functionality. Oh, and remember the bounds option I showed you before with the convoluted typing? This one. It becomes a lot simpler now, as you can see. Now there's a bounce from object that has methods to get the bounce from an element, a selector, the viewport, or the parent. And you can even provide padding to all of these methods. This is quite flexible now. And it's also a lot easier to use than before. Heck, in fact, you don't even have to use bounce from at all. You just have to pass a function which returns an array of initial and final coordinates of bounce. Super simple. Sometimes something that is very fascinating about the code library now is that it's not even a draggable library anymore. As in, it will maintain all the states required to make it a draggable, but just the code library won't do anything itself. It won't move the box with the draggable attachment on its own. No. Instead, even the moving part is now a plugin. What you see above is a list of plugins included by, or sorry, on the left, I would say, plugins by default in every draggable instance. As you can see, there's a transform plugin. This is the one doing the actual DOM transformations to move the element. All it does is receive the state from the code library and apply the transform to the element. This is quite a smart design because now you can just remove this plugin and the draggable will not move at all, but still be draggable. And then you can write your own plugin which can move it according to the state, like animating it with a string or tween animation. Whatever, you can do anything. You can even write your own plugins, by the way. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. If you want a magnetic snap, you can have that. If you don't like how the existing grid plugin works, write your own super grid. If you wish to make a drag and drop library on top of Neodrag, just write your own drop zone plugin. It's as easy as that. This is the example of the state marker plugin, which just attaches data Neodrag attributes to the root node. The root node is the one where you apply the draggable. It's a non-cancelable plugin, which means it runs even when other plugins cancel the drag. This plugin will still run. There's a setup lifecycle, as you can see. I'm not sure if you can see everything. Yeah, never mind. It's all good. Which is run when the plugin is first attached to the draggable. This is where you do any initial setup, like attaching event listeners or creating new state. This is also run when the plugin is updated. And then there's a start lifecycle, which is run when the dragging actually starts. This is where you can do any setup that needs to happen when the drag starts, like adding classes or styles. Finally, there's the end life cycle, which is run when the drag ends, which is where you can do any cleanup that needs to happen when the drag ends, like removing classes or styles. In this case, you can see I am setting new drag state to idle in the line. And if you look at this particular line, you'll notice something interesting happening. Here's a Neodrag specific function called effect.paint. Any side effects are done in this effect lifecycle, and it is scheduled to be run in the next frame, minimizing layout thrashing. Another advantage is that it is cancelable. Means if any other plugin down the line cancels the drag operation, this effect will not be run. It will just be discarded. This is useful to avoid having to reverse changes. And then setup, start, and end are not the only hooks you have access to. You can tell if the plugin can update live. You can set its priority of when it should run in the whole plugin chain. And then there are the methods: should start, drag, and cleanup. Should start allows any plugin to cancel the drag operation before it even starts. And this is useful for plugins that want to do some pre-checks before allowing the drag to start. For example, the bounce plugin, before you start dragging, it wants to make sure that, hey, I want to make sure that I'm within that bounce. And then drag lifecycle method is run every single pointer move, which can happen hundreds of times in a second, and allows you to do any updates to the state during the drag operation. And finally, cleanup is run when a plugin is removed from the draggable. Great for cleaning up any dangling state or event listeners. Let's talk about fine-grained reactivity. Now, this is not the fine-grained reactivity that Svelte has, but rather it's specific to Neodrag. Let's look at the example from the old version. As we discussed before, position being updated recreates the entire object passed to the draggable. Now, if something like this were to be done to the new architecture, for example, this, it could work the same as before, but the issue is that it will recreate all the plugins, all the objects inside every time, which is a lot worse than before. Like garbage collector will just go insane at this point. Uh, this is not good, and this is not what we want, of course. So Automatic reactivity has been disabled in Neodrag now. So Neodrag version 2 had automatic reactivity, but for this I had to disable it here. But it's been replaced with something even better. I'll touch on that. Which means the example I showed above does not actually work. It will recreate the objects again and again, but will not update the draggable attachment. Instead, Neodrag version 3 comes with the concept of compartments. Compartments are a way to hold a plugin. Compartments must be updated manually whenever the state change should affect Neodrag. They are quite powerful. You can set them to null or undefined and will almost be like the plugin got removed from Neodrag with its cleanup method being run and all the cleanup happening regularly. In the code, as you can see, the position is passed as a function to the compartment, and later it is updated to a new position plugin instance. Neodrag will take care of the rest and update the draggable with the new plugin instance. Another thing to notice is that instead of an array of plugins, we are actually passing a function that returns an array of plugins, as you can see here. This ensures that the plugins array is never recreated, making this a reference stable value. This is important for performance as it avoids unnecessary updates to the draggable attachment and no more GC, garbage collection. With this compartment approach, only the bits are recreated that are actually important. But at the same time, this is not a very practical example. You almost always have a state variable like position, which is the source of truth, and everything else should react to it. So if we do that, the code will actually look somewhat like this. This is a bit better. We only have a single source of truth variable now, and the compartment is updated to value changes in the effect, as you can see. However, it's still not so good. There's still duplication here. If a component gets really complex, you might forget to update the plugin in one place and it will be hard to trace around. Of course, there's a more idiomatic way of doing this, thanks to Svelte 5. Thanks to Svelte 5 rules, this becomes a one-liner. Compartment.off takes a function which is run in an effective scope. Means whenever the pause variable changes, the compartment is updated automatically. This is the most idiomatic way of using compartments in Svelte, and it works very well. And there are compartment adapters for other frameworks as well. Vanilla, of course, doesn't have a state management system, so you can just use a simple object to hold the state. And then you can use the compartment to update the position plugin instance whenever the state changes. This is quite powerful. It seems my camera is going down, so I'll just quickly update it. Yeah, looks a lot better now. This is quite powerful and it allows you to have fine-grained control over the state of the draggable attachment. And it is idiomatic to all the frameworks shown above. Like in React, you can see there's a dependency array, just like a use memo. Now, let's talk about extensibility and wrappers. If you import Draggable directly from Neodrag/Svelte, it comes preloaded with certain plugins, delegates, and other configurations. Of course, sometimes you would like to remove these plugins or change the delegate. In that case, it is very easy to do so. Create your Draggable factory with the options you want and write a wrapper that takes advantage of factory.draggable. That's it. In fact, what you see on the screen is the exact code of Neodrag/Svelte minus the reactive compartment stuff. That is how simple it is. This is the entire Neodrag/Svelte package, by the way. And it's not simple just for the Svelte adapter cases. It's simple even for the view version, which is a view directive. So on the top, you can see the div view draggable equal to access y. This is how we use it. And all the code on bottom is the adapter. That's it. Very simple. This is like 10 lines of code. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the bundle size. I've been talking about removing the functionality from core out into the plugins. So surely that must have decreased the bundle size, right? I'm afraid that's not the case here. All the extra logic to be a mini framework takes up space, so the size has gone up. However, I'm happy to say that it's still really small compared to most of the competitors out there, which are also single framework. The new size, if you import draggable as is and don't add or remove anything, is 3.46 kilobytes. That's it. Then as you add plugins, the size increases, but the maximum it reaches is 5.08 kilobytes. So only 1.7 kilobytes extra from the default. While this is a 100% size increase from Neodrag version 2, I believe it pales in comparison to the 1000% improvement to the library because of the new changes. As for the video you see here, it's on the homepage of the new site, next.neodrag.dev. Feel free to check it out. Now, this was all about how the library looks. I would like to uh, talk a little bit about the changes internally that made things a lot better. I think they are quite fascinating. So previously, Neodrag used to attach three event listeners to the element pointer down, pointer move, and pointer up. This was not slow at all, but it was not the best either. The example above actually creates 600 event listeners by not doing anything. That's how it is. That is 600 entire function, objects, the internal variables, and a lot of memory. Quite a lot and not so performant. However, I got this idea from Svelte 5, which has event delegation. So now Neodrag version 3 has event delegation as well, which means now it attaches a single event listener to the HTML attribute for each other pointer down, pointer move, and pointer up events, and then uses the event or target to figure out which element was actually dragged. This is a lot more performant and also reduces memory usage by a lot. The example above now only creates three event listeners, one for each event, and no extra memory is used for the function objects. You could create 10,000 draggables and it would still only have three event listeners. That's it. The beauty of this new architecture is that it does not know what plugins it's gonna get. There's no line in the code which says if plugin.name equal to triple equal to neotrack colon position, do something. No, it doesn't care. It doesn't know the plugins that's going to get. All plugins are same to it, and it just runs them in the order of their priority, which can be overridden by the user. This is a mini framework where it doesn't know the state or components it's gonna get. Combine that with plugins returning state objects in setup, the core library stores the state of each plugin and provides it back to the plugin while its different hooks are run. Frameworks deal with states, so it's kind of a mini framework. I'm repeating myself again now. And if you remember from before, the effect.paint, that is there not only for scheduling things to run performantly, but it's actually to store the callbacks, run all the plugins, make sure no cancellations or errors happen, and then run the callbacks. Svelte, React, and React do pretty much a similar thing combined with error boundaries, and this is not much different. Uh, Go ahead and try it out. The documentation is on next.neodrag.dev, and you can install it just by using npm install neodrag core and neodrag svelte. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me, right? Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
That was very cool. Let me also, I mean, let's keep your share screen so that if you need to show something else. First thing first, I think some of the slides were kind of bugging, unfortunately. So I don't know if, for example, the sides one definitely bugged a bit. So you just had, so if you want to show the sides, because I know that you are proud of that, you are proud of that. I think like it's also on the website, right?
Yeah, precisely. So this is a new website. So I would just like to go around and show
Yeah.
some of the stuff that I'm working on. By the way, this is still not the fully new website. I'm reworking the homepage. I think it's going to be pretty good. So this is it. You can just drop on the page. You can drag stuff around. And this example is the one where I was saying that you can store the position, and when you let go, you can change the position back to go back. As in, you can change the position back using a spring animation. So this is it. The second I let it go, it goes back. And then there are a lot of examples like this. For example, this is one of my favorite ones. This is still the old example. I'm working on something even better. You can just drag things around and then you can reset them. And yeah, this is quite satisfying. Then there's this thing that I was advertising where you can check which plugins cause how much bundle size. This is a minified plus Brotli, and it shows you all the details. And this is like a kitchen sink demo, lot of stuff. Yeah, I really like this one. And then there's this neat new little doc which is kind of inspired by macOS, and you can go to a different pages using this one. So I'll go to, sorry, not React. I should go to Svelte one. We are on a Svelte podcast. So there's the Svelte one, and you can also go to a different documentation pages. So this is for the controls. This is for the access, and of course, let me go to the dark mode. I think it looks a lot better there. Yeah, so I'm in the dark mode, and of course, I'm on the access page, but this is for Svelte. As you can see, this is the Svelte syntax. Now, if you are a view user, you can just click on this, and ta-da, you are on the access page, but the view documentation bit. You can do the same for vanilla JS. You can do the same for Solid, for React as well. This took a lot of work, and I'm quite proud of that. And of course, I like to insert the library in places that you would not expect. So, hey, this is also draggable, and it can be persisted between different pages.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
pretty much it. I work on the
I
new
think it's
website.
one of the
Sorry.
rules of a library documentation website. Like you need to use the library in some way. Like,
Yes, and you have to use it in very subtle manners in places that people they have to figure it out. Don't feed it to them. Let them
yeah,
figure it out. Like this, you have to figure it out. You just can't. There's no hint that you are supposed to do this. But if you figure it out, it's quite fun. That's it on the website.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And in general, I think the library is pretty cool. Again, I've used it a bit in one example that I was working on, and I think it's quite pleasant to use. I think the API is also it is a bit technical. I would say not technical, but like there's a lot of like compartment.auth. It's something that you need to get used to. I know that you got the idea probably
String.off.
from the thing to type code in.
Tween. I got it from Tween. Tween and Spring. That are the new
No, no,
classes. Tween and Spring.
I was talking about the compartment idea. It's probably
Code
coming
mirrors. That's
from
from
Code
Code Mirror.
Mirror. Exactly. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, which is like it's. I think it's a very powerful idea, and I think actually like the idea actually comes back from a computer science background, right? But yeah, I think it's a pretty powerful idea, but they do have like a bit of an initial friction, right? However, I do think that, like, especially with compartment off and the whole like in the end, I think you were able to actually make together this API like doesn't feel like a big like how can I say it? It
It
doesn't
does not
feel
give you a panic attack like how Code Mirror
yeah,
is running.
exactly. Like despite using some pretty like obscure, like whenever I had to work with compartment in Code Mirror, I'm scared of touching compartment in Code Mirror. I was not scared to use compartment in your library. That's what I was that's what I was about to say.
That
Um,
sounds great. And I'm not borrowing any more ideas from Code Mirror. Like that is not a good direction to go in. There were some things that I could have done that I could have taken from Code Mirror. Actually, just forget about this whole thing. What I realized while building this is that if you try to build your own library and make it the best reactive possible version, it becomes Code Mirror. You get facets, it turns into Code Mirror. Like I
yeah,
cannot think of a better API than that, and it still sucks. So it's not the best possible idea. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm not adapting any more ideas from that. I think
yeah.
apartments is good enough.
I think like Code Mirror is probably like they want to be as flexible as possible, and that's why they adapted all these computer science ideas that can allow you to be the most flexible possible. But again, like I think that you actually picked the right thing to get inspiration from. I also like I'm a huge fan of like every plugin system because the ability to like really customize something, like for example, I think that one of the things that made Vite win, because let's be fair, like Vite kind of won already,
Yeah.
but I think that it's the plugin system which was kind of borrowed by Rollup, but the idea that if you need something you can just build it for yourself and the library is not responsible. And you also, I think you can show it because like you also did the right thing to support, like to provide a bunch of plugins yourself. So that was, I think it's the right thing to do because you also got to like work with your plugin system, which helps you refine the plugin system for others.
Yeah, precisely. It was quite nice, and uh, yeah, and I get that the whole compartment thing is a bit hard to swallow in the beginning. Like you have to kind of read around. I think something that I did better than Code Mirror was actually document things properly from for a beginner's perspective. I think Code Mirror documentation really failed for beginners. It assumes you just know all these things. I think I've done that better, at least decent for this one. Another reason is that I did not want to go for compartments. I had another idea, but then I was thinking, hey, what if Neodrag can be more than just a draggable library? What if it can be a drag and drop? What if it can be sortable? And for that, I could not the best possible denominator to be able to implement all of that in the same library. Compartments were needed. I will introduce that later, but I think I I,
Yeah, but
I
again,
think compartments are the thing that will enable drag and drop very
yeah,
easily. Yeah.
yeah. Again, I think like you did a very good job of like using them without make them like so present like they are in Code Mirror because
Yeah.
again, like whenever I try to use Code Mirror, obviously there are a bunch of other stuff, but compartment was like a concept that was very present and it was like difficult to understand. While in your library is just almost an implementation detail. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, Puru. Thank you very much for like showing us this kind of stuff. There is like I just want to show you a comment from JD that like I just want to highlight it because I think it's nice for you because it just say performance god at work. So,
Oh. Yeah, I
but
see it. Thanks,
but
JD.
but he also said that it's that he doesn't like the fonts because I think that he thinks that the sans serif like he doesn't like sans serif, but like I think you did it because of Svelte, and I think like it's actually the right choice because if you want to read documentation, like in it actually needs to be nice on the eye. All right,
Yeah,
Puru.
precisely. I'm not a big fan of sans serif either. I just wanted a different font for the new website just to
Yeah,
distinguish it. That's
yeah,
pretty much it. But that was my original thinking. I've grown a lot to it, and I think I will. I think I'll keep it. I'm
yeah.
not getting rid of it now.
I think it's nice. All right. Thank you, Puru, and thank you for showing, and thank you for like joining me today episode with even with the changelog. And I'll see you around. And thank you guys for joining. Thank you for like listening. I think actually like it's been a long episode today, 1 hour and a half. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next Friday.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.